There is one reality in life, and that is death. It is the great equalizer. The rest is a distraction. What have you done to prepare for it? Do you really know where you have come from and to where you are really going? To all who come to see and hear of this documentary, let it be known that our fight is not with any group of people. Our fight is with Satan himself, who has successfully deceived the world into going astray. For it has become ever so evident that most people have no clue not only of who is God, but also who is Satan. This message of truth is a final warning to all people, to the Jewish, the Christian, the Muslim, the Hindu, the Buddhist, and even to the atheist. This is a final warning to all of humanity. If you are like most people in the world, who refuse to search and examine the truth of their religion from the very own scriptures with a clear mind, then I strongly urge you to turn away now. For this presentation is clearly not for you. It is those with the courage to accept the truth, who have the wisdom and understanding to question the clergy. You will embark on new understanding to the Torah, Gospel, and Quran, which has never been revealed before in the history of humanity, which amazingly matches the true prophecies of Enoch and Idris, and seriously exposes the false teachings of the clergy and the scholars. It is those whose names have been written in the book of life before the creation of the world that will come to accept and believe this message.
When we go in search of these evil spirits, there are none that stand out more than those in the table of nations. But before we can reference them, it is imperative one acquires the full understanding of how these nations came to exist on our earth in the first instance. In order to accomplish this goal, we have to fully analyze the very vague text of Genesis 11. As noted earlier in the book of Jasher, which we will be referencing from, who is mentioned in the Bible in Joshua 10:13 and 2 Samuel 1 verse 18. It is from all the above evil foundation that we ultimately arrive at Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. From what we have just read, there are 7 pivotal questions that present themselves. What was the one language that the whole world was speaking? Who was the ruler of this world? Why was the tower built? Who built the Tower of Babel? Why did the Lord confuse the language of the whole world? Why did the Lord scatter them over the face of the whole earth? And what happened after the language was confused? From the above damning text of Genesis 11 verse 1, Now the whole world had one language. And from the damning testimony of the angel of God in Genesis 11 verse 6, one people speaking the same language. The answer to what the one language that was spoken has already been proven from the evidence of the following scripture, that is of Arabic origin, which became the initial writings of Genesis, as demonstrated in the beginning of this presentation. Conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan. The conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan is a Christian extra-canonical work found in Ge'ez, translated from an Arabic original. The above scripture, my dear brothers and sisters, is also known as the Forgotten Books of Eden, which further consolidates the truth of the Arabic original in the opening text. The first book of Adam and Eve, also called the conflict of Adam and Eve with Satan. The version which we give here is the work of unknown Egyptians. The lack of historical allusion makes it impossible to date the writing. Parts of this version are found in the Talmud, the Quran, and elsewhere, showing what a vital role it played in the original literature of human wisdom. The Egyptian author first wrote in Arabic, which may be taken as the original manuscript, and that found its way farther south and was translated into Ethiopic. For the present English translation, we are indebted to Dr. S.C. Malan, Vicar of Broadminster, who worked from the Ethiopic edition edited by Dr. E. Trump, Professor at the University of Munich. Dr. Trump had the advantage of the Arabic original, which makes our bridge over the gap of many centuries a direct one. The above damning evidence that Arabic was the original language is further consolidated in the testimony of the New American Bible, which contains the Vatican seal of approval and the picture of the late Pope John Paul II on its cover. That we discover the Arabic word Qurban, which means offering to God, in Mark 7 verse 11, along with the Arabic word Jahannam that translates to hell in Luke 12 verse 5. By the end of this damning presentation, we will prove beyond reasonable doubt, my dear brothers and sisters, that Arabic is indeed the language of the heavens and not Hebrew, as the world has falsely been led to believe. The other damning clue lies within the story of the tower itself, beginning with Genesis 11 verses 3 to 4. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves." From what we can ascertain, it is clear these people were stubborn and arrogant, to the point they wanted to defy God by wanting to make a name for themselves in history, by building a tower that reaches to the heavens. It is clear these defiant people were succeeding in their mission for God to send down His angel. In Genesis 11 verse 5 to 6, "But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower of the people were building. The Lord, which we know as the angel, said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this." Note the next words in the last part of verse 6, where the angel confirms these people succeeded in building the tower. then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. They succeeded only because they were one people speaking the same language. So God puts an end to their evil plans by confusing the one language in the next verse of Genesis 11, verse 7. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. This one language is clearly defined in the next verse 9 as none other than Arabic, through the word of Babel and its clear translation. That is why it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. When we take a look at the dictionary meaning of Babel in Arabic, this is what we come up with. Babel, noise, confusion. What is of most interest at the table of footnotes in Genesis 11 is that the Arabic Babel supposedly sounds exactly like the Hebrew Babel, and with supposedly the exact meaning. Genesis 11:9, that is Babylon. Babel sounds like the Hebrew for confused. When we clearly know the original Arabic text was first translated into Ethiopian, as quoted only moments earlier. Egyptian author first wrote in Arabic, which may be taken as the original manuscript, and that found its way farther south and was translated into Ethiopic. How confusing indeed. It is crystal clear from what we have just read that in the beginning, after the flood, there was only one united kingdom as one nation, under one ruler and under one language in the whole world. It is from the golden clue of the one kingdom, one language that we were able to identify its ruler from the table of nations who stood out amongst the rest in the damning text of Genesis 10, verses 10 to 12. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah, and Rezin, which is between Nineveh and Calah, which is the great city. It is from the golden clue of the first centers of his kingdom were that we ascertain that he was the ruler of the whole earth. For it is clear all of those areas above were only the first centers of his rule. It is from here that we were able to clearly identify him as Nimrod, the son of Cush, in Genesis 10, verse 8. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who became a mighty warrior on the earth, of which he was the grandson of Ham, the supposed son of Noah, in verse 7. When we cross-reference the same information in the book of Jasher, which is referenced in the Bible itself, we gain a greater understanding to the character of Nimrod and the true events of all the above in Jasher 7. And Nimrod dwelt in Shinar, and he reigned securely, and he fought with his enemies, and he subdued them, and he prospered in all his battles, and his kingdom became very great. And all nations and tongues heard of his fame, and they gathered themselves to him, and they bowed down to the earth, and they brought him offerings, and he became their Lord and King. And they all dwelt with him in the city of Shinar, and Nimrod reigned in the earth over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union, but Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord, and he was more wicked than all the men that were before him, from the days of the flood until those days. And he made gods of wood and stone, and he bowed down to them, and he rebelled against the Lord, and taught all his subjects and the people of the earth his wicked ways. And Mardon, his son, was more wicked than his father. And everyone that heard of the acts of Mardon, the son of Nimrod, would say concerning him, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. Therefore it became a proverb in the whole earth, saying, from the wicked goes forth wickedness. And it was current in the words of men from that time to this, now our current time. It is of most importance to note, when we rearrange the letters of Mardon, the son of Nimrod, it becomes Namrod, a name almost identical to the father Nimrod. How intriguing indeed. It is when we cross-reference the following information with what we have just read in Genesis and Jasher that things begin to get a lot more interesting. Namu reigned 2047 to 2030 BCE, was the founder of the third dynasty of in Sumner, who initiated the so-called Third Period, 2047 to 1750 BCE, also known as the Sumerian Renaissance. He is best known as the king who composed the first complete law code in the world, the Code of Namu. An earlier law code, known as the Code of Urukagina, from the 24th century BCE, is only known through partial references to it. And so, since the actual text itself has not been found, Namu's code is considered the oldest extant. Namu is also credited as the builder of the great ziggurat of which still rises above the ruins of the city in the modern day. Although he is frequently credited with overthrowing the rule of the Gutians, who had conquered Akkad and assumed control of Sumer and the rest of Mesopotamia, he actually followed the lead of the king of Uruk, one Utu-Higel, his father-in-law, and only took a commanding role once Utu-Higel was killed. Although he did drive the Gutians from the cities of Sumer, he did not conquer them. This was accomplished by his son Shulgi, who some claim also wrote the famous Code of Laws. It seems that the governor of Namu, who had been appointed by Uruk's king, took the opportunity of the unexpected power vacuum to fight, defeat, and annex Uruk. The details of exactly how this came about are unfortunately lost to us. The above is the foundation tablet of Namu. Although the exact details may be lost, fragments from the ancient documents known as the Mesopotamian Chronicles, also known as the Babylonian Chronicles, do fill in the story at least roughly. What seems clear is that Namu was the son-in-law and ally of Utu-Higel, and that the Uruk king had appointed him to rule most likely after the defeat of Gutians, and probably as a reward for service as general, or simply because he was his son-in-law. After Utu-Higel drowned, Namu saw an opportunity to advance himself and took it. The line in the chronicle stating Uruk was defeated may refer to a military conquest, but could as easily mean that it lost its position of leadership and that honour passed to and its governor, Namu. Reign of Namu. The kings of the Akkadian Empire had by this time, after over 100 years of Gutian occupation, passed into legend. Stories of the exploits of Sargon the Great and his equally famous grandson Naram-Sin were regularly recited in performance, and it seems even at family gatherings for entertainment. Recognizing the value of aligning himself with these earlier rulers, Ur-Nammu purposely presented himself as the inheritor of the glory of Akkad as part of the Akkadian lineage. He instituted a patrimonial state in which his subjects were encouraged to see him as a father figure who cared for his children and wanted only the best for them. To this end, he created his code of laws, sometimes around 2050 BCE. Regarding Ur-Nammu's governing policies, Kriwazek writes that for a patrimonial state to be stable over time, it is best ruled with consent, at least with consent from the largest minority, if not from the majority. Instinctive obedience must be the norm. Otherwise, too much effort needs to be put into suppressing disaffection for the regime's wider aims to be achievable. This consent was almost guaranteed to be given by the people of Ur once Ur-Nammu began to present himself as the successor of the Akkadian heroes and liberator of the people. He continued, or may have continued, the effort to expel the remaining Gutians from Sumer and took control of other Samaritan cities such as Lagash on the Persian Gulf and the sacred city of Eridu. His popularity among his subjects is apparent in stele and inscriptions. The historian Windeland writes that Ur-Nammu did much to enhance the economic and military security of the country. For such efforts, he was lauded in the Sumerian hymn that also extols his dedication to the god Enlil of Nippur. Ur-Nammu was also the subject of other literary works, such as the text in which he visits the netherworld. Shulgi of Ur, 2029, 1982 BCE, is considered the greatest king of the Ur-3 period in Mesopotamia, 2047 to 1750 BCE. His father was Ur-Nammu, who founded the third dynasty of Ur and helped to defeat the occupying forces of the Gutians. And his mother was a daughter of King Utu-Higul of Uruk. Her name is not known, who first led the uprising against the Gutian occupation. Shulgi inherited a stable kingdom after his father was killed in battle with the Gutians and proceeded to build upon his father's legacy to raise Sumer to great cultural heights. A literate man, he reformed the scribal schools and increased literacy throughout the region. He allocated funds for the continued maintenance of the cities, improved the existing roads and built new ones, and even instituted the first roadside inns so that travellers could stop, rest, eat and drink as they travelled. He declared himself a god during his lifetime and seems to have been worshipped by the people following his death. His reign is well documented as he had many scribes making inscriptions of his accomplishments, but this documentation has been challenged on the grounds of inaccuracy. While it does seem clear that Shulgi reigned well, the majority of the documents relating to the details of his rule were those he ordered to be set down. Later chroniclers would accuse him of impiety and falsification of records, but the archaeological evidence seems to support his version of his reign very well. When we read Genesis 10 verse 6, the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sapta, Ramah, and Sabtika, then cross-reference them with the book of Jasher 7 verse 10, and the sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Satika. We clearly ascertain, my dear brothers and sisters, that there is no mention that Nimrod is the son of Cush. And when we read Genesis 10 verse 8, Cush was the father of Nimrod, and focus on the translation of the word father in the footnotes at the bottom of Genesis 10, father may mean ancestor or predecessor or founder. Then cross-reference all of the above with the text of Jasher 9 verse 21, and all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together, Phut, Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan with their families. We discover that Cush is clearly and without a doubt no father of Nimrod, but clearly a wicked ancestor who served under him along with the wicked descendants of Japheth and Ham, that became the clear enemies of the one true and eternal God, as defined in the following prophecies. Ezekiel 30:4-5. A sword will come against Egypt, and anguish will come upon Cush. When the slain fall in Egypt, her wealth will be carried away, and her foundations torn down. Cush and Libya, Lydia and all Arabia, Kub and the people of the covenant land will fall by the sword along with Egypt. Ezekiel 32 verse 26. There is Meshesh, Tubal, and all her multitude. Her graves are round about him, all of them uncircumcised, slain by the sword, though they caused their terror in the land of the living. It has become ever more clearer, my dear brothers and sisters, from all the above information, that Japheth, Ham, Cush, Nimrod, and their descendants were the product of evil spirit known as the jinn, as we defined on multiple occasions earlier, bringing to full fruition what was written in Genesis 6 verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after, that when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. The above priceless knowledge now helps us to define that it is Nimrod, the giant evil jinn, that became Sargon of Akkad, Ur-Nammu, and Shulgi, Nimrod, and Mardin, amongst many more names, who were all clearly one, as derived earlier from Jasher 7 verse 48. As is clearly evident from the following information, Sargon of Akkad as divine Shulgi of Ur. In his book, The Gaza Discovery, author Peter Goodgame has done a masterful job of laying the foundation of who this guy was to the ancient world, and who he will be in the days ahead. The Bible calls him Nimrod, but to the ancients he was known as Gilgamesh, Baal, Malkah, Adonis, Ishnum, Dumuzi, Dionysus, Bacchus, Orion, Mithra, Apollo, Ra, Tammuz, Osiris. All of the above evidence confirms our point of view that it was the jinn that deceived most of all those 83 souls that survived with Noah, as the following text of Jasher consolidates. Jasher 9 verse 10. And there was not a man found in those days in the whole earth who knew the Lord, for they served each man his own God, except Noah and his household. And all those who were under his counsel knew the Lord in those days. Moving on, when we read Jasher 9 verse 20, and King Nimrod reigned securely, and all the earth was under his control, and all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. We discover the omitted text hidden by the false scribes, rabbis, and Pharisees from the Genesis, that King Nimrod was the king of the entire earth. When we continue to cross-examine the story of Babel of Genesis in Joshua 9, 21 to 22, and all the princes of Nimrod and his great men took counsel together, Phut, Mizraim, Cush and Canaan, with their families. And they said to each other, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and in it a strong tower, and its top reaching heaven. And we will make ourselves famed, so that we may reign upon the whole world, in order that the evil of our enemies may cease from us, that we may reign mightily over them, and that we may not become scattered over the earth on account of their wars." And they all went before the king, and they told the king these words, and the king agreed with them in this affair. And he did so. When we read all of the above, we come to the revelation, my dear brothers and sisters, that all of Phut, Mitzrayim, Cush, and Canaan with their families were clear allies of Nimrod, and clearly not his enemies, as we ascertain in Joshua 9, 23 to 24. And all the families assembled, consisting of about 600,000 men, and they went to seek an extensive piece of ground to build the city and tower. And they sought in the whole earth, and they found none, like one valley at the east of the land of Shinar, about 2 days' walk, and they journeyed there, and they dwelt there. And they began to make bricks and burn fires to build the city and the tower that they had imagined to complete. When we read Joshua 9, 25 to 39, we can clearly ascertain why all these people and their clans became the eternal enemies of God, and from the very beginning of our world. And the building of the tower was unto them a transgression and a sin, and they began to build it. And whilst they were building against the Lord God of heaven, they imagined in their hearts to war against him and to ascend into heaven. And all of these people and all the families divided themselves in 3 parts. The first said, "We will ascend into heaven and fight against him." The second said, "We will ascend to heaven and place our own gods there and serve them." And the third part said, "We will ascend to heaven and smite him with bows and spears." And God knew all their works and all their evil thoughts, and he saw the city and the tower which they were building. And when they were building, they built themselves a great city and a very high and strong tower. And on account of its height, the mortar and bricks did not reach the builders in their ascent to it, until those who went up had completed a full year. And after that, they reached to the builders and gave them the mortar and the bricks. Thus was it done daily. And behold, these ascended and others descended the whole day. And if a brick should fall from their hands and get broken, they would all weep over it. And if a man fell and died, none of them would look at him. And the Lord knew their thoughts. And it came to pass, when they were building, they cast the arrows towards the heavens, and all the arrows fell upon them filled with blood. And when they saw them, they said to each other, "Surely we have slain all those that are in heaven." For this was from the Lord, in order to cause them to err, and in order to destroy them from off the face of the ground. And they built the tower and the city, and they did this thing daily until many days and years were elapsed. And God said to the 70 angels who stood foremost before him, to those who were near to him, saying, "Come, let us descend and confuse their tongues, that one man shall not understand the language of his neighbour. And they did so unto them. And from that day following, they forgot each other man his neighbour's tongue, and they could not understand to speak in one tongue. And when the builder took from the hands of his neighbour's lime, or stone which he did not order, the builder would cast it away, and throw it upon his neighbour, that he would die. And they did so many days, and they killed many of them in this manner. And the Lord smote the 3 divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, "We will ascend to heaven and serve our gods," became like apes and elephants. And those who said, "We will smite the heaven with arrows," the Lord killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbour. And the 3rd division of those who said, "We will ascend to heaven and fight against him," the Lord scattered from throughout the earth. And those who were left amongst them, when they knew and understood the evil which was coming upon them, they forsook the building, and they also became scattered upon the face of the whole earth. And they ceased building the city and the tower. Therefore he called that place Babel, for there the Lord confounded the language of the whole earth. Behold, it was at the east of the land of Shinar. And as to the tower which the sons of men built, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up 1/3 part of. And a fire also descended from heaven and burnt another third. And the other third is left to this day, and it is of that part which was aloft, and its circumference is 3 days' walk. And many of the sons of men died in that tower, a people without number. It is clear from the above verses of 37 and 38, as it is from Genesis 11 verse 8 and 9, that there are 2 cunning motives behind placing the table of nations before the story of Babel. One, it is to conceal the damning truth that the list of nations in Genesis 10 with their own languages came as a direct result of what eventuated in Babel, as can be clearly ascertained from Genesis 10 verse 4. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, the Kittites and the Rodanites. From these the maritime people spread out into their territories by their clans within their nations, each with its own language. And from the testimony of Josephus, but he caused a tumult among them by producing in them diverse languages, and causing that through the multitude of those languages they should not be able to understand one another. And 2, the second reason behind putting the table of nations before the story of Babel is to conceal a bigger truth, that Abraham and his family existed before the advent of the Tower of Babel in Jasher 7 verse 22. And Peleg, his brother, begat Yen, and Yen begat Seruj, and Seruj begat Nahor, and Nahor begat Terah. And Terah was 38 years old, and he begot Haran and Nahum. And Jasher 9:19. And Abraham said unto himself, Surely these are not gods that made the earth and all mankind, but these are the servants of God. And Abraham remained in the house of Noah, and there knew the Lord and his ways, and he served the Lord all the days of his life. And all that generation forgot the Lord, and served other gods of wood and stone, and rebelled all their days. And clearly not after, as the planted deceit of Genesis 11:22-31 alludes to. We are given vital information that is clearly omitted from the text of Genesis 11, that from the one language of Arabic, God produced in these defined people a multitude of diverse languages, so that they should not be able to understand one another. This pivotal information is further consolidated in the testimony of the holy Jewish book of Jasher, which clearly illustrates the omitted truth that the languages were divided into 70. The book of Jasher confirms this idea as well in chapter 48, verse 43. It describes the throne of Pharaoh as follows: "And the throne on which the king sat was covered with gold and silver and onyx stones, and it had 70 steps." The narrative goes on to describe the reasons for the 70 steps, stating that they represent the 70 languages of man. Also, any man who understood to speak in all the 70 languages, he ascended the 70 steps and went up and spoke till he reached the king. And any man who could not complete the 70, he ascended as many steps as the languages which he knew to speak in. It was customary in those days in Egypt that no one should reign over them, but one who understood to speak in the 70 languages. In the next chapter of Jasher, we see in the account of Joseph being made second in charge of Egypt that Pharaoh's officers protested the idea of someone ruling over them who did not know all 70 languages. This would have been presented a problem for Joseph if it were not for an angel of the Lord coming to him that night and teaching him all 70 languages. Jasher 49, 9 to 18. The concept of the 70 languages, my dear brothers and sisters, is further supported in the following information. That is why Nimrod was known in so many cultures. In the Hungarian legend of the enchanted stag, more commonly known as the white stag, Fehérszarvas or silver stag, King Nimrod, often described as Nimrod the giant or the giant Nimrod, descendant of one of Noah's most wicked sons, Cam. Nimrod figures in some very early versions of the history of Freemasonry, where he was said to have been one of the fraternity founders. According to the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, the legend of the craft in the old constitutions refers to Nimrod as one of the founders of Masonry. Thus, in the York MS, number 1 we read, "At ye making of ye tour of Babel, there was a Masonic first much esteemed of, and the king of Babylon, yet called Nimrod, was a Mason himself, and loved well Masons." However, he does not figure in the current rituals. The demon Nireki, figuring in the Finnish Kalevala as a helper of Lemminkainen, is associated with Nimrod by some researchers and linguists. When we go back and zoom in on the first half of verse 35 in chapter 9, Jasher, which reads, "And the Lord smote the 3 divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. Those who said, 'We will ascend to heaven and serve our gods,' became like apes and elephants." From what we have just read, we discover 2 epic factors that were falsely invented to deceive mankind. 1. We can now understand where the conspiracy of evolution came from, that man evolved from apes. Even though common sense and reason and understanding would tell all that absolutely no species of ape would exist in our world today if mankind had replaced them. 2. We can clearly ascertain the origins of some of the Hindu gods that are worshipped in our world today, that have elephant faces with human bodies, as well as monkey faces with human bodies, such as that of Ganesh and Hanuman. It is no coincidence that the city of the monkey god was recently found, ancient lost city of the monkey god found, and now the treasure hunters are moving in. 14th of January 2016. The government in Honduras is digging up part of the country's remote rainforest in a real-life Indiana Jones-style gold hunt. The president of Honduras has given the green light to treasure hunters to plunder a rainforest to recover treasure from the mysterious lost city of the monkey god. Documentary filmmaker Steve Elkin stumbled across a wealth of artifacts and treasures after searching for what he believed was an ancient city buried deep within the largest untouched rainforest in Central America last year. Aided by SAS soldiers, teams of explorers, scientists and archaeologists, they thought they'd struck gold after uncovering treasures they believed belonged to the lost city of the monkey god, which has been known internationally as the White City of Gold. Known locally as the legendary settlement of La Ciudad Blanca, it is thought to contain untold treasures that could be valued at billions of pounds. The monkey god city, or White City of Gold, was recorded in correspondence 5 centuries ago in Europe, when in 1526 King Charles V of Spain received a letter from his conquistadors. From what we have just cross-referenced from Jasher and Genesis, one cannot help but ask him or herself why the following was omitted from Genesis 10. And the sons of Magog were Elkanah and Lubal. And the children of Madar were Acon, Zelo, Shazoni, and Lot. And the sons of Javan were Shittim and Dudunim. And the sons of Tubal were Arifi, Kesed, and Tari. And the sons of Meshesh were Dedan, Zaran, and Shebashni. And the sons of Tyrus were Benib, Jera, Leperion, and Gilak. These are the sons of Ham, according to their families, and their numbers in those days were about 730 men. Why were the descendants of Phut that appeared in Jasher 7:12, and the sons of Phut were Jabal, Hadan, Bana, and Adan, omitted from Genesis 10, verse 6 altogether? The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Rama, and Sabtika. One cannot help but ask, why were the sons of Seba, Havilah, Sabta, and Sabtika omitted from Genesis 10, verse 7? And why was the following information omitted? These are the sons of Shem, according to their families, and their numbers in those days were about 300 men. And one cannot help but ask why all of the following were left out from the table of nations. Jasher 7:15-17. The sons of Elam, Shushan, Merchel, and Harmon. The sons of Asher, Myras, and Machil. The other 2 sons of Arpachshad, apart from Shilak, Anna, and Ashol. And the sons of Lud, Pethor, and Bizayon. When we come back and analyze the following names of those people of Genesis that became nations, we discover the following geographical biblical map. One can acquire a greater understanding about the table of nations in the following link. Here is a picture that is symbolic of Gog and Magog in Melbourne, Australia. We can clearly ascertain that Gog, the statue on the left, is represented by Ur-Nammu, who built the Zagharud, as we covered only moments earlier. Here is a video of Gog and Magog in London. It is not till we deeply re-examine the prophecy of Ezekiel 38:1-23.
And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face toward Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them splendidly attired, a great company with buckler and shield, all of them wielding swords, Persia, Ethiopia, and Put with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer with all its troops, Beth Togarmah from the remote parts of the north with all its troops, many peoples with you. Be prepared and prepare yourself, you and all your companies that are assembled about you, and be a guard for them. After many days you will be summoned. In the latter years you will come into the land that is restored from the sword, whose inhabitants have been gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had been a continued waste, but its people were brought out from the nations, and they are living securely, all of them. You will go up, you will come like a storm, you will be like a cloud covering the land, you and all your troops, and many peoples with you. Thus says the Lord God, it will come about on that day that thoughts will come into your mind, and you will devise an evil plan, and you will say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages. I will go against those who are at rest, that live securely, all of them living without walls and having no bars or gates, to capture spoil and to seize plunder, to turn your hand against the waste places which are now inhabited, and against the people who are gathered from the nations, who have acquired cattle and goods, who live at the center of the world. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all its villages will say to you, have you come to capture spoil? Have you assembled your company to seize plunder, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to capture great spoil? Therefore prophesy, son of man, and say to Gog, thus says the Lord God, on that day when my people Israel are living securely, will you not know it? You will come from your place out of the remote parts of the north, you and many peoples with you, all of them riding on horses, a great assembly and a mighty army, and you will come up against my people Israel like a cloud to cover the land. It shall come about in the last days that I will bring you against my land, so that the nations may know me, when I am sanctified through you before their eyes, O Gog. Thus says the Lord God, are you the one of whom I spoke in former days through my servants the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in those days for many years that I would bring you against them? It will come about on that day when Gog comes against the land of Israel, declares the Lord God, that my fury will mount up in my anger. In my zeal and in my blazing wrath I declare that on that day there will surely be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish of the sea, the birds of the heavens, the beasts of the field, all the creeping things that creep on the earth, and all the men who are on the face of the earth will shake at my presence. The mountains will also be thrown down. The steep pathways will collapse, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will call for a sword against him on my mountains, declares the Lord God. Every man's sword will be against his brother. With pestilence and with blood I will enter judgment with him. And I will rain on him and on his troops and on the many peoples who are with him, a torrential rain with hailstones, fire, and brimstone. I will magnify myself, sanctify myself, and make myself known in the sight of many nations, and they will know that I am the Lord.
Ezekiel 39. Son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and drag you along. I will bring you from the far north and send you against the mountains of Israel. Then I will strike your bow from your left hand and make your arrows drop from your right hand. On the mountains of Israel you will fall, and you and all your troops and the nations with you. I will give you as food to all kinds of carrion birds and to the wild animals. You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. I will send fire on Magog and on those who live in safety in the coastlands, and they will know that I am the Lord. I will make known my holy name among my people Israel. I will no longer let my holy name be profaned, and the nations will know that I, the Lord, am the Holy One in Israel. It is coming. It will surely take place, declares the Sovereign Lord. This is the day I have spoken of. Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use their weapons for fuel and burn them up. The small and large shields, the bows and arrows, the war clubs and spears. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. They will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut it from the forests, because they will use the weapons for fuel, and they will plunder those who plundered them and loot those who looted them, declares the Sovereign Lord. On that day, I will give Gog a burial place in Israel, in the valley of those who travel east of the sea. It will block the way of travelers, because Gog and all his hordes will be buried there. So it will be called the Valley of Hamon Gog. For 7 months the Israelites will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. All the people of the land will bury them, and the day I display my glory will be a memorable day for them, declares the Sovereign Lord. People will be continually employed in cleansing the land. They will spread out across the land, and along with others, they will bury any bodies that are lying on the ground. After the 7 months, they will carry out a more detailed search as they go through the land. Anyone who sees a human bone will leave a marker beside it until the grave diggers bury it in the valley of Hamon Gog, near a town called Hamona, and so they will cleanse the land. Son of man, this is what the Sovereign Lord says. Call out to every kind of bird and all the wild animals. Assemble and come together from all around to the sacrifice I am preparing for you, the great sacrifice on the mountains of Israel. There you will eat flesh and drink blood. You will eat the flesh of mighty men and drink the blood of princes of the earth, as if they were rams and lambs, goats and bulls, all of them fattened animals from Bashan. At the sacrifice I am preparing for you, you will eat till you are glutted, and drink blood till you are drunk. At my table you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind, declares the Sovereign Lord. I will display my glory among the nations, and all the nations will see the punishment I inflict and the hand I lay on them. From that day forward, the people of Israel will know that I am the Lord, their God. And the nations will know that the people of Israel went into exile for their sin, because they were unfaithful to me. So I hid my face from them and handed them over to their enemies, and they all fell by the sword. I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their offences, and I hid my face from them. Therefore, this is what the Sovereign Lord says. I will now restore the fortunes of Jacob, and will have compassion on all the people of Israel, and I will be zealous for my holy name. They will forget their shame and all the unfaithfulness they showed towards me when they lived in safety in their land with no one to make them afraid. When I brought them back from the nations and have gathered them from the countries of their enemies, I will be proved holy through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. For though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own land, not leaving any behind. I will no longer hide my face from them, for I will pour out my spirit on the people of Israel, declares the sovereign Lord. Ezekiel 32:26. There is Meshesh, Tubal, and all her multitude. Her graves are round about him, all of them uncircumcised, slain by the sword, though they caused their terror in the land of the living. There is no clearer picture than in above prophecy that confirms the absolute truth that God is against the Gentiles. So far, we have seen that prior to the flood, Satan and his host of jinn directly interacted with humans, leading them into sin, death, and destruction. As he clearly did after the flood, only this time we saw that a giant, rose up, empowered by the devil, to oppose God and his servants. He did this at the Tower of Babel. Thus the first anti-God and antichrist figure arose after the flood. His name was Ur-Nammu, Nimrod, and all those other names we mentioned. There he tried to kill God and set up a new order with himself, serving as the God of this world. 2 Corinthians 4, verse 4. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. We can now clearly ascertain from all of the above, my dear brothers and sisters, why these evil nations in Genesis 10 that were formed from the evil spirits, the jinn, became the eternal enemies of God, and why God proceeded to utterly kill and destroy them through his prophets, as can be ascertained from all of the following. It is to these jinn that mankind offered up sacrifices and continue to offer up human sacrifices till this present day, as Enoch had prophesied in Enoch 1:19, verse 2. Then Uriel said, "Here the angels who cohabited with women appointed their leaders, and being numerous in appearance, made men profane, and caused them to err, so that they sacrificed to devils as to gods, of which Moses affirmed in Deuteronomy 32, verses 16 to 17. They made him jealous with their foreign gods, and angered him with their detestable idols. They sacrificed to false gods, which are not God, gods they had not known, gods that recently appeared." And as the book of wisdom strongly consolidates in Wisdom 12, verses 3 to 6 and 11, the sins of the Canaanites. You hated the people who lived in your holy land long ago, because they did horrible things. They practiced magic and conducted unholy worship. They killed children without mercy and ate the flesh and blood of human beings. They were initiated into secret rituals in which parents murdered their own defenseless children. Their whole nation was cursed from the start, and though you had not punished them for their sins, it was not because you were afraid of anyone. The enemies of God performed all of the above in defiance to the will of God that was passed down to Noah in Genesis 9, verse 4. But you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it, and for your lifeblood I will surely demand an accounting. I will demand an accounting from every animal and from each human being. 2. I will demand an accounting for the life of another human being. It is from the above abhorrity that the idea of eat my body and drink my blood was conceived as a sacrificial memory to Nimrod and maliciously planted into the saying of Jesus in John 6:54. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day, of which this evil ritual continues till this very day, not only in the Catholic Church, but outside of it, as the testimony of the following amazing people affirms. 15-year-old girl survived Illuminati satanic rituals abuse. Retired head of FBI tells all Illuminati Satanism pedophilia rings. We can now clearly understand why God spoke the damning words in all of the following. Deuteronomy 7:1-3. When the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hath cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them, neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. Joshua 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Joshua 3, verse 10. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. Joshua 17:18. But the forested hill country as well, clear it, and its farthest limits will be yours. Though the Canaanites have chariots fitted with iron, and though they are strong, you can drive them out. Exodus 23:28. I will send the hornet ahead of you to drive the Hivites, Canaanites, and Hittites out of your way. Nehemiah 9, verse 8. You found his heart faithful to you, and you made a covenant with him to give his descendants the land of Canaanites, the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Jebusites, and Girgashites. You have kept your promise because you are righteous. Exodus 23:23. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Joshua 24:11. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites, but I gave them into your hands. Numbers 21:3. The Lord listened to Israel's plea and gave the Canaanites over to them. They completely destroyed them and their towns, so the place was named Hormah. Deuteronomy 20:17. Completely destroy them, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, as the Lord your God has commanded you. Surah 7, verse 38. Allah will say, enter among nations which had passed on before you of jinn and mankind into the fire. Every time a nation enters, it will curse its sister, until when they have all overtaken one another therein. The last of them will say about the first of them, our Lord, these have misled us, so give them a double punishment of the fire. He will say, for each is double, but you do not know. When we go back to the beginning of this section and do a quick summary, we come to the full understanding, my dear brothers and sisters, that the first half of the vague text of Jude 1 verse 6, and the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, was indeed referring to the jinns that interbreeded with both male and female humans to vastly multiply in our earth. It is from this point that we now gain a clearer understanding that these defiant and godless tribes who grew in vast numbers became known as Gog and Magog, of which Tubal Cain was an ancestor. They said, O Zuckerman, the Gog and Magog do great mischief on earth. Shall we then render thee tribute in order that thou mightest erect a barrier between us and them? What is more frightening, my dear brothers and sisters, is the rebirth of these tribes through their descendants that appear on the table of nations, beginning with Genesis 10 verse 2, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech and Taurus. And it is not until we re-examine the prophecy of Jesus in Revelation 20 verse 8, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And the following text of the Quran, until when Yajuj and Majuj, Gog and Magog, are let loose from their barrier, and they swiftly swarm from every mound, and the true promised day of resurrection shall draw near to fulfillment. It is not till we fully examine all of the above, my dear brothers and sisters, that we fully define the last half of Jude 1 verse 6. He has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. The giants that were born in our existing world did not live as long as the pre-flood era, bringing to fruition the promise of our God in Genesis 6 verse 3. Then the Lord said, I will not allow people to live forever. They are mortal. From now on they will live no longer than 120 years. As consolidated in Jasher 7 verse 20. And the name of the second was Yoktan, meaning that in his day the lives of the sons of men were diminished and lessened. Nor were they as large as the pre-flood era, as scientifically clarified earlier. The epic fact that giants indeed existed after the floods is consolidated in the damning admissions of the Smithsonian cover-up. Smithsonian admits to destruction of thousands of giant human skeletons in early 1900s. A US Supreme Court ruling has forced the Smithsonian Institution to release classified papers dating from the early 1900s that proves the organisation was involved in a major historical cover-up of evidence showing giants' human remains in the tens of thousands had been uncovered all across America and were ordered to be destroyed by high-level administrators to protect the mainstream chronology of human evolution at the time. The allegations stemming from the American Institution of Alternative Archaeology, the AIAA, that the Smithsonian Institution had destroyed thousands of giant human remains during the early 1900s was not taken lightly by the Smithsonian, who responded by suing the organisation for defamation and trying to damage the reputation of the 168-year-old institution. During the court case, new elements were brought to light as several Smithsonian whistleblowers admitted to the existence of documents that allegedly proved the destruction of tens of thousands of human skeletons, reaching between 6 feet and 12 feet in height. A reality mainstream archaeology cannot admit to for different reasons, claims AIAA spokesman James Sherwood. There has been a major cover-up by the Western archaeological institutions since the early 1900s to make us believe that America was first colonized by Asian peoples migrating through the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago. when in fact there are hundreds of thousands of burial mounds all over America which the natives claim were there a long time before them, and that show traces of a highly developed civilization, complex use of metal alloys, and where giant human skeleton remains are frequently found but still go unreported in the media and news outlets, he explains. Above is a picture of a giant human femur uncovered in Ohio in 2011 by the American Association for Alternative Archaeology, similar to the evidence presented in court. A turning point of the court case was when a 1.3 metre long human femur bone was shown as evidence in court of the existence of such giant human bones. The evidence came as a blow to the Smithsonian's lawyers, as the bone had been stolen from the Smithsonian by one of their high-level curators in the mid-1930s, who had kept the bone all his life and which he had admitted on his deathbed in writing of the undercover operations of the Smithsonian. "It is a terrible thing that is being done to the American people," he wrote in his letter. "We are hiding the truth about the forefathers of humanity, our ancestors, the giants who roamed the earth, as recalled in the Bible and ancient texts of the world." The US Supreme Court has since forced the Smithsonian Institution to publicly release classified information about anything related to the destruction of evidence pertaining to the mound builder culture and to elements relative to human skeletons of greater height than usual, a ruling the AIAA is extremely enthused about. The public release of these documents will help archaeologists and historians to re-evaluate current theories about human evolution and help us greater our understanding of the mound builder culture in America and around the world, explains AIAA Director Hans Guttenberg. Finally, after a century of lies, the truth about our giant ancestors shall be revealed to the world, he acknowledges, visibly satisfied by the court ruling. The documents are scheduled to be released in 2015, and the operation will be coordinated by an independent scientific organisation to assure political neutrality. My dear brothers and sisters, the Smithsonian cover-up was implemented by the devil and his advocates as part of a conspiracy to distort history and promote the deceit of evolution, when there was no case for evolution. As we dig deeper into the truth, we will discover the dark reality that evolution is the root of all evil. Here is more evidence that exposes the conspiracy of evolution by a man I came to highly admire in Kent Hovind, despite his ignorance to the deceit and lies of his own faith. Simply Google the most hated Kent Hovind video by the US government and why they imprisoned him, YouTube. The priceless knowledge we have now gained that God has given reprieve for Satan to deceive mankind till the end of time, that he and his jinn shall remain in the earth till judgment day, that evil spirits proceeded from the flesh of the giants because they were created from above, from the holy watchers was their beginning and primary foundation. Evil spirits shall they be upon the earth, and the spirits of the wicked shall they be called. That the spirits of the giants shall be like clouds, which shall oppress, corrupt, fall, content, and bruise on our earth. That upon the earth shall be the habitation of terrestrial spirits who are born on earth. That Gog and Magog existed pre-flood era through the evil seed of Cain, and after, through those descendants who are listed on the table of nations. And that these evil tribes that are buried, chained in our earth, only to be released before judgment day, along with the forbidden knowledge that Satan and his jinn can never protrude the sky of this earth. All of the above confirms the tragic truth that Satan and his host, who together clearly became jinns, were able to deceive humanity post-flood till this very day through the millions of jinns that became Hindu gods and thousands of Christian saints amongst others, as clearly prophesied by Jesus in the tampered text of Revelations 12, verse 9. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to earth, and his angels, whom we now clearly know as jinns, with him.
And that concludes this episode of our series. In the next episode, entitled The Real Abraham, we will reveal the omitted truth about Abraham, which will cement our constant claim that the times, names, and events of our current world have been heavily corrupted by the devil and his servants in order to deceive mankind.